My name's Garrett Epple. You're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
On Schreiber. Sidearm whip. Scores.
Now it's one. Fidel scores. Hands off for Rabel. Switches hands and scores.
Kylie Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Right off the bat, there's Lyle Thompson.
With the first pick of the expansion draft, the Waterdogs are going to take Connor Kelly.
Welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk, the voice of Pro Lacrosse. I'm Hutton, he's Adam. Together, we're bringing you interviews with your favorite players and coaches, as well as news from all 4 professional lacrosse leagues. Welcome to another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. I am Hutton Jackson. I am joined by my co-host once again, Adam Moore. He was out sick last week. Adam, how are you feeling now?
Good, man. Returning from the dead. For everyone who didn't know, I ended up having vertigo, something that I thought sailors got, right? Scurvy and vertigo. I thought that's what old sailors coming home from sea used to get, and it was wild. I got a virus that affected my inner ear, and I felt like I was on a roller coaster for about a week and a half. So happy to be back on the pod and having my vision back, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, we're happy to have you back. We appreciate Adam Levy stepping in for you last week. We were going to have him join our show with all of us. You got sick, so he ended up stepping up and doing a great job. We'll definitely have him back on again. And not to make light of your situation, but we are on another roller coaster, and this time it's a roller coaster of lacrosse news because this week was jam-packed, whether it be the NLL, PLL, MLL. We have a lot of news to cover this episode. We're going to be talking Waterdogs, we're going to be talking Hammerheads, we're going to be talking the NLL. We have just a ton of stuff to talk about. But before we do, Adam, why don't you recap these NLL games from this weekend?
Yeah, man, we had a busy week 11 in the National Lacrosse League starting on Friday. The Bandits went into Vancouver on retro night and defeated the Warriors 15-8. In the battle of the goalies this weekend, the Rush and Evan Kirk outlasted the Mammoth and Dylan Ward 9-7. The Roughnecks got another victory as they defeated the New York Riptide 13-9. Toronto then beat the Bandits in their second game of the weekend, 13-9. And we saved one of the best ones for last as the Warriors went into Rochester and defeated the Nighthawks 11-10 on an OT thriller by Mitch Jones. So that's your fast break. Now let's hit the quick stick.
All right, our quick stick is jam-packed today. Again, we have a lot of news from all 3 of those leagues that we mentioned. We'll start off with the NLL and some really disheartening news. The Seals and Warriors Rumble on the Runway game that was planned for this coming weekend at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar has been moved to Pechanga Arena due to the base needed to remain mission capable. And that is actually because it is serving as a coronavirus quarantine station. So that is the reason they had to move the game. Really unfortunate, real bummer. But hopefully the NLL and the Seals can put on this event in a future season. You know, it was really disappointing that they couldn't do it this year. Obviously, you know, some serious things going on at Miramar. So it was a must for them to move the game. You know, you don't really want it at a site that they're treating the coronavirus. So definitely important there, but unfortunate for us fans. Some other news in the NLL, the Thunderbirds and Rush are having their military appreciation game this weekend. They revealed their military-inspired jerseys, which are very cool looking. The Rush, you know, have some digital camo going on, and the Thunderbirds ended up going with a whole royal blue, kind of to represent the Canada Armed Forces. So, yeah, I think the jerseys both look sweet. The Thunderbirds logo that they're actually using, I think was originally considered for the Halifax expansion franchise initially. They were going to be the Halifax Fleet. That was a name that was discussed before they decided on the Thunderbirds. The colors actually that they chose were very similar to the initial colors before they went with the orange and purple. So some cool jerseys. Definitely check those out on our social media pages. But let's go on to some MLL news. A lot of news coming out of Major League Lacrosse, probably the most we've had this whole offseason. We'll first start off with the Rattlers officially being shut down in favor of a new franchise called the Connecticut Hammerheads. So Dallas Rattlers will not be operated this season by the MLL. Their team name and logo will still be retained by the league, so they could make an appearance in future seasons down the road if they decide to go back to Dallas. But Bill Warder, the coach of the Rattlers, will now take over as coach of the new expansion franchise, Connecticut Hammerheads. Going off of that, the Outlaws, who have also been rumored to be perhaps been moving, they stay put, so they're going to be in Denver again this year. Matt Backlett was named president of the Outlaws. He obviously had a historic career with the Outlaws, winning multiple championships. His number was retired this past season. He's a defensive coordinator with the team, and now he was named president. So we don't know what that means for his role as an assistant coach. We assume that he'll still be, coaching from the sidelines. He will also have duties as the president of the Outlaws. And then finally, in some really big and exciting news that I know you're really excited to talk about, Adam, the Philadelphia Barrage trademark has been re-registered by the MLL, so it's more than likely that the Atlanta Blaze will move to Philadelphia and become the Barrage. Obviously, we're both really excited about that. We had the hashtag Bring Back the Barrage, and it seemed to have worked because it looks like the Barrage could be making a return soon. Nothing is official yet, but that trademark has been officially registered. It is the same logo that they used before the team folded, so it is almost 99% likely that the Barrage are making a return. And then following that, in the PLL, they announced that Minneapolis will be the Week 6 destination. They will be playing at Viking Lakes, which is a practice facility to the Minnesota Vikings. So a state-of-the-art venue. They continue to diversify their tour stops. They mixed it up going to Dallas in Week 5 and now, Minneapolis in Week 6. So obviously exciting that they're branching out. I think this is another great venue. Minneapolis, is obviously home to Epic Lacrosse and, getting to be a really big hotbed for youth lacrosse. So I think it's a great move. And then we also have word from Dan Arestia that he's reached out to Providence Park in Portland, and they are in the bidding to host a PLL week. So nothing is set in stone, but that is at least being eyed as a tour stop. So that would obviously check off the box of getting a Pacific Northwest tour stop in the PLL this season. If they do decide to go to Portland, Providence Park is home to the Portland Timbers. So we definitely think that would be a really great venue for them to explore too. So nothing set in stone for that, but we'll get you some more information as that starts to come out. And then finally, the PLL hosted its expansion draft, and the team featured a lot of obvious picks as well as some big shockers as well. Those drafted were Connor Kelly, Christian Cuccinello, Brody Merrill, Charlie Cipriano, Ben Reeves, Kyle McClancy, Kieran McCardle, Brian Karalunas, Ben McIntosh, Drew Snyder, Ryan Drenner, Noah Richard, Steve DiNapoli, Wes Berg, Chris Sabia, Ryan Conrad, Danny Ipe, and Drew Simoneau. So a lot of names on here that we kind of expected, and then there's a few that, we really didn't expect. So let's move on from our quick stick and break down this Waterdogs roster. Let me get your first initial reactions, Adam, from this roster.
Like you said, there were a lot of names on here that we were expecting to see, and there were some names that we were curious about. We didn't really know what Ben Reeves' situation was, so some of us had him on those rosters, but and some didn't. I think we both talked in previous pods that we thought if he was going to be available to play next year, he'd be on this Waterdogs roster, and we were definitely correct when it comes to that. It made sense to have a guy like Snyder on the squad and Ryan Drenner. It's definitely Whipsnakes heavy, and we talked our thoughts on who was going to be selected. We fully expected 4 guys from that squad to be taken, and that came to fruition too. And there were, like you said, there were some notable players that weren't selected on that roster. And we just talked to Curtis Dixon a little bit ago, right, on the pod, and he's talked about his excitement to join the PLL next year. And I fully expect him to be on that Chaos squad, and I really see him having an opportunity to really excel with their style of play next year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Curtis Dixon. He fully intends to play this season. Yeah, and you add him, to the attackmen they already have, with Connor Fields, Josh Byrne, and Miles Thompson. And you have 4 guys that have indoor experience, that can really make that offense run. So, they like to push it in transition. They really like making those acrobatic plays. We see Connor Fields is a human highlight reel. Curtis Dixon, not afraid to leave his feet and really has a presence around crease, as well as, can really shoot too from the 5-and-5. And then, Josh Byrne's another guy too who really made a name for himself. And I think they were really bogged down by injuries last year. None of those guys other than Connor Fields were healthy completely throughout the whole season. So I think the Chaos are in pretty good shape. But yeah, you mentioned the Whipsnakes were really hit hard, losing Snyder, Reeves, Kelly, and Drenner. So they reached the 4-player max, and thank goodness, because they probably could have lost a few other guys as well. Yeah. But yeah, that's what kind of stood out to me. And then what also stood out to me was the fact that the Redwoods really didn't lose too many key pieces. They lost Wes Berg. He obviously did really well for them down the stretch. He's another indoor guy. that it looks like he's going to get some more time going forward. And then Brian Karalunas as well, was doing really well for them too at the LSM position. But they have guys like Clark Peterson and Larkin Kemp to really kind of step in and fill those roles. They didn't lose Pat Harbison. They shockingly didn't lose Sergio Saucedo. So I think the Redwoods are in really, really good shape going forward. And if I'm coaching at St. Laurent, I'm pretty pleased with how the expansion draft turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's bringing most of his team back, and we don't know what next steps are too. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but when it comes to the player pool draft that's coming up, when it comes to the college draft coming up, they are in a position and have some pieces. If they wanted to move and make a bigger trade for or something like that, they didn't lose too much, which is really important going forward.
No, absolutely. Let me just get your thoughts on who really stood out to you as surprising on this roster from who was selected by Andy Copeland?
Yeah, one guy I was a little surprised that they saved was face-off guy Drew Simoneau from the Chrome, Not that he isn't a fantastic player, but I thought that was a position where that they could have filled in a lot of different ways, whether that's through that player pool draft or the college draft coming up. So he was one of the guys that I really kind of was surprised that they used one of their 18 spots for.
Yeah, no, and for me, I was a little surprised by the Simoneau pick as well. I thought that maybe they'd just forgo taking a Fogo. I also thought, DiNapoli and McClancy were two kind of under-the-radar guys that, I might have gone with a Pat Harbison at the short-stick defensive midi position, but they decided to go with DiNapoli. Two guys, though, that were really solid, and again, like I said, flew under the radar. So not bad picks by any stretch of the mind, but I am a little bit surprised that they decided to take those two guys over a guy who I thought was a little bit more proven, like a Pat Harbison, and they did get a guy like Ryan Conrad, who we both said was a no-brainer to pick. He's a two-way guy. Danny Ipe from the Archers was another guy that, I think really is going to come into his own with this team. He had a really good season with the Archers, fastest guy in the league. And then they picked two guys that, we both thought that they should pick, but a lot of people didn't really have on their mock drafts. I'll go first with Charlie Cipriano. I really thought because of the Fairfield connection that Andy Copeland would like to, draft him. He obviously played under Coach Copeland at Fairfield and was an All-American there. He has plenty of MLL starting experience too. He was a starter for the Hounds for 2 years in the MLL. So I predicted that, he might be the goaltender that Coach Copeland goes with, and sure enough, it was his pick. So, a lot of people had Jack Kelly, a lot of people had Adam Gittleman. Those two, solid goaltenders. I think they deserve to be starting goaltenders in this league. But Cipriano's going to get his shot to kind of prove his own in this one, and get the shot to be the Waterdogs starting goaltender.
Yeah, and a guy for me, Ben Mcintosh, who obviously is a fantastic player. And if you go on to our boy Joe Keegs' Twitter, he says RIP to the Mcintosh two-man game. But he was a guy that I when we were going through our protected rosters, fully expected to be protected, and was surprised that he didn't end up on that Archers protected list, and really excited to see him get another opportunity to continue playing and continue excelling on this new Waterdogs roster.
No, absolutely. Joe Keegan's really predicting the two-man game to really make a big impact this season. Not that it hadn't last year, but he thinks teams are really going to look at what they saw on film from this past season and, kind of take it to the next level. So, yeah, obviously a great pick. Now let's discuss, though, some of these guys that ended up not being protected and not picked up. So I made a list, just a quick list. We mentioned a few of them, but guys like Sergio Saucedo, Romar Dennis, Pat Harbison, Cade Van Raphorst, who I was really surprised didn't get picked, Joel Tinney, Joey Sankey, Chris Kluche, Curtis Dixon, Miles Thompson, Adam Gittleman, and Jack Kelly were all left still available, so they will revert back to their teams. The biggest one for me was Van Raphorst, of course, who I thought, had a really great rookie season with the Atlas, so that's a big gain for the Atlas to get him back. Sergio Saucedo, he was an all-star. We spoke to him a little bit about how, he was kind of playing with a chip on his shoulder and how he really thought he could, come into whether it be the Waterdogs or go back to the Redwoods and kind of make a name for himself and kind of take his game to the next level. So we'll look to see him doing that with the Redwoods next year. And then Romar Dennis, who again, really didn't get as much time as he should have probably gotten last year on the Chrome. They were obviously last place. They didn't utilize him that much. He was unprotected. He was pretty outspoken in Dan's article about how upset he was with not playing that much last year, despite being active for all 10 games. He just didn't like how they didn't utilize him and was actually looking forward to possibly being drafted by the Waterdogs, to the point that if he was left unprotected, he said that he would probably demand a trade. So here he is now. The Waterdogs did not choose to draft him. He's going to go back to the Chrome roster. Do you think maybe they release him to the player pool, or he gets the trade that he's looking for?
Definitely a tough situation for Romar, but I don't foresee them giving up on an asset for nothing. I fully expect a trade to go down at some point, whether it's for future draft pick assets or a swap in the player pool draft. I don't think the Chrome will just give him away for nothing, and I fully expect them to get something pretty strong in return for a guy that could be a starter on a few squads.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he definitely had some strong comments. Like I said, going as far as saying that he would like a trade if he ended up back on the Chrome roster. Yeah, so obviously we'll be watching his situation closely. And then, Jack Kelly, was also left. We don't know if he'll get a shot at being a starting goaltender. He obviously deserves a chance. He still is rehabbing that ACL injury, and that's kind of the decision that Copeland made, why he decided not to pick him. He even said that on the broadcast was because he wanted to go in with a healthy goaltender, one that he knew and one that was proven, and so that's why he chose Cipriano. And honestly, I think this team could really compete this season. So I think they look good right now. And the other thing to remember is there's still plenty of talent in the entry draft and in the college draft, like you mentioned, Adam. There's still talent on these rosters too. I think a guy like a Dylan Maltz really has an opportunity now to step up for the Whipsnakes in the absence of, a Reeves and a Kelly and a Drenner. So I think maybe we might see him get a little bit more playing time, and, we could see them kind of attack this draft a little bit more. And then, I think the Archers, too, losing Cuccinello, I think they want a solid third attackman to kind of step in with Holman and Manny. And I think, with the number one pick, Grant Ament might be the guy for them.
One thing I'm really curious about for next steps is how this player pool draft is going to work. We don't really know anything in regards to how the draft selection is going to go in terms of order. There's some great players obviously already in the player pool. As many people are suspecting, there's going to be a few transfers from the MLL potentially once those contracts are up in a few weeks. That draft may be just as stacked as this one was, and as stacked as the college draft will be come the springtime. So there's so many moving pieces still. The puzzle isn't really clear yet.
No, yeah, and the rumor is that the Waterdogs will get that number one pick, but that's not for certain yet. And if they do, and that pairs with another rumor that Rob Pennell is coming over to the PLL, they're going to have another solid attackman.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious if Coach Copeland has those rules or knows how that's going to happen. You couldn't go wrong with a lot of these players, but for the players that some people are kind of scratching their heads on potentially, it may be because he knows a little bit more than we do when it comes to next steps in how the league's developing.
No, absolutely. I'm sure he's weighing all options, as all these coaches are, heading into this now entry-level player pool draft as well as the college entry draft. So we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys leading up to those drafts. But with that wraps up our Waterdogs discussion. We're going to take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll discuss the newest team to hit Pro Lacrosse, the Connecticut Hammerheads.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast. We've been using Anchor for our podcast since the very start. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place, and better yet, it's free. They allow you to easily record and edit your podcast so it sounds great and send it out to all the major networks such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Better yet, they connect you with advertisers so you can start making money from your podcast right away. So if you're interested in starting a podcast, download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Today's show is being brought to you in part by Stitcher Premium. You can use Stitcher Premium to listen to shows ad-free such as Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, My Favorite Murder, Wolverine the Lost Trail, or our favorite, The Fantasy Footballers. For only $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year, you get access to Stitcher Originals, bonus episodes, and comedy albums. Better yet, if you go over to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code lacrosse today, you can get 1 month free. So head on over to Stitcher, sign up, and get your free trial today. All right, welcome back. No, it is not Jaws. It is the Connecticut Hammerheads. They are the newest team to join the MLL. They will be playing at Fairfield University at Rafferty Stadium. The MLL announced it this week. They right now have a pretty cool logo, if you ask me, Hammerheads logo. Blue and yellow is going to be their color scheme. We don't know what players will be on that roster, but we do know it will probably be a large majority of the Rattlers players, and they will be coached by Bill Warder. So let's get into our discussion about what we thought about this logo and this new team.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the New England fan base to get a squad back up there. I don't think they've had a squad in that area since Bridgeport, right? Since the Barrage left Bridgeport. So one thing I will say, it was a little bit of a head scratcher how the announcement came about, how they said that the Rattlers were ceasing operation and then a new team was created despite coach moving over and some of the players. So that was something that I found interesting, but super excited for the MLL for this move. It did bring me back to late 2000s. NLL for me, kind of reminded me of the Columbus Land Sharks logo from that early 2000s, but I thought it was a solid logo. Interestingly enough, we were talking when the Waterdogs logo came out how we don't necessarily always enjoy when a lacrosse stick is in an actual lacrosse logo, but I thought this one was solid. I'm fine with it, so we'll see. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked the hammerhead shark. It was a little cartoonish for me. And again, like you said, it holding a lacrosse stick. I don't know if that was necessarily, a huge necessity. Again, it's kind of cheesy sometimes to have the stick in the logo. It works for like a youth team because you want your team's logo to people to know it's lacrosse related. But when it's a pro team, you already know that's lacrosse. So I thought that was, a little hokey, but overall, it wasn't terrible. I liked it more than the Waterdogs logo, and I love the color scheme. I love the navy blue and yellow. I think they have opportunity for some really cool uniforms, kind of maybe along the lines of the launch, but maybe more blue and gray than the gold, and use the gold as an accent color. But yeah, I really like the logo. I love the location too. Playing at a venue that holds 3,500 people, I think it's the perfect size for the MLL. They obviously hosted a 2016 playoff game for the MLL. So, overall, I think it's a good move moving them to Connecticut. Dallas, I think, still has an opportunity there, but, it just wasn't really working right off the bat. And right now they kind of have to consolidate a little bit more. Just, they have to really weigh where they're placing these teams since they don't have the luxury of, like, the PLL to travel to city to city. So, overall, I like the move. And we did a poll online, too, to see what people preferred, whether it be the Waterdogs logo or the Hammerheads, and the Hammerheads narrowly beat them 55.2% to the 44.8%. I personally prefer the Hammerheads logo. If I had to choose between both of them, I would choose the Hammerheads. That's not to say that I love both of them, and that's not to say I hate both of them, but I don't know. What were your thoughts? Do you prefer the Hammerheads or the Waterdogs logo right now?
I'm still a Waterdogs guy. To be honest with you, at this point, I like their color scheme a little bit more. I'm excited to see, especially with the mock-up of the helmet that dropped and a lot of the fan art jerseys for the Waterdogs. I'm excited to see what they come up with when it comes to jerseys. But both are fine for me. I don't think either for me was a home run, but I think I'd have to lean Waterdogs.
All right, yeah, no, I'm the same way with not thinking that either was a home run, but I lean the other way at the Hammerheads. But overall, it's exciting to see new teams come into the leagues. Me and you are both big gear guys, so seeing new logos always kind of gets us excited. Whether we like them or not, it's kind of just, really exciting to just talk about in general. Those are our thoughts on the Connecticut Hammerheads. Now let's shift gears to the NLL. We had some great games this weekend. Again, the NLL, the parity in this league is amazing. So let's start off with this Mammoth Rush game, a big West Division matchup. The Rush take the rubber match in this one. They defeated the Mammoth 9-7. This game was back and forth and tied heading into the fourth quarter. Both teams traded goals to make it 6-6 with under 12 minutes to play, but it was the Rush that ended up coming out on top. They would win 9-7, and they would hand the Mammoth a really brutal loss. The Mammoth, now are 3-4 against Western opponents, 4-6 overall. Continue to struggle despite Dylan Ward, making 45 saves, including one that was straight up robbery. He almost pulled, I guess you could say, a Marc-Andre Fleury with this one save. He was completely turned to the one side and dove, making a stick side save to rob the Rush of a goal. If you guys haven't seen it, check out our social media. The save is amazing. Probably the save of the year right now, in my mind. But unfortunately, it didn't get him the win. For the fourth time this year, he held the opponent to under 10 goals. But again, it wasn't enough. The Mammoth offense continues to struggle. And like I said, Colorado finds themselves at 4-6, fourth in this West Division. But Adam, I have to ask, are we worried about the Mammoth at this point?
Yeah, this is already the third time this season that Dylan Ward has lost a game where he's led up less than double-digit goals. So you can't blame this one on D. Ward there. I just don't think they're getting the consistency that they are looking for from those top offensive guys other than Eli McLaughlin. Ryan Lee and Kyle Killen have had big games one week, but then put up only a point or two the next. Joey Caputo will have a big game and then is non-existent after that. So the team was putting together complete games at the beginning of the season and just no longer are doing that. So I guess long-winded answer is yes, I'm worried about them kind of going forward.
Yeah, no, and they're fourth in the West, as I mentioned. They only have 3 more games against Western opponents to make up some substantial ground in the division. So, yeah, I'm worried too. I think you have obviously one of the top goaltenders in Dylan Ward, so he's always going to give you a chance. But unless this offense really starts to put together, some complete games, I'm gonna, kind of doubt the Mammoth going forward. Now let's shift gears to the North Division. We'll talk Bandits versus Rock. This is a rematch from 3 weeks ago. The Bandits enter this one on a 6-game win streak, but the Rock would bring that to a close, much like they did against the Halifax Thunderbirds last week. This game was a shootout in the second quarter and ended up being tied 8-8 going into the third. And then the third was the exact opposite. It was a defensive slugfest with only 1 goal being scored. But the Rock's 3-goal run in the fourth quarter would give them the lead and ultimately the win over their North rival. So my question for you, Adam, thoughts on the Toronto's second straight win and fourth of 5 straight games against North opponents. They're sitting right now third in this North Division, but they're at 5-2, only half a game back from the 6-2 Buffalo Bandits, and then the 6-1 Halifax Thunderbirds. This North Division's wide open. What did you really take away from this game?
I really took away about how quietly the North division is the best division in the NLL right now. We talk so much over the past few weeks about the Eastern Division and not so much the Western Division. We talked about the woes of the West, I guess you could say. Even at 6-1, the Thunderbirds really don't have this division locked up with how many games each squad still has to play. So the only real thing we know about the North Division, unfortunately, is that I don't think Rochester is going to be able to make up the games to get back into the contention.
Yeah, no, unfortunately at 1-7, I think the Rochester Nighthawks playoff hopes are all but lost. But I think, we could see these 3 other teams from the North make the playoffs. Right now the top 2 from each division will make it, and that leaves 2 wildcard spots. I would be willing to bet that if one of these 3 teams finds themselves, third in the division, they're going to get this wild card spot. There's still plenty of the season left, but right now it's looking pretty good for this North Division. But, you did mention the Nighthawks, who are now 1-7, unfortunately, after this weekend. So let's go to this game on Sunday against the Warriors. What did you see from this game that you really took away from?
Yeah, this was just another brutal one for Nighthawks fans, especially in front of that home crowd. Mitch Jones ended up getting the OT dagger in this one. even more salt to the wound for this one was not only was it an OT winner for the Warriors, but it was while they were man down too. This is the second week in a row that the Nighthawks squandered a lead with under 30 seconds left to play in a contest. So, they've been playing well. Despite their record, they've absolutely improved thus far through the season comparative to where they were at the beginning. They were leading for most of this one, like I said, they were leading 10-9 with 30 seconds to go before Mitch Jones, who had another fantastic week, especially in fantasy, which we'll talk about in a little. But he not only got the OT winner, but he knotted this one up with under 30 seconds to go. And the third quarter, I have to say, continues to be Rochester's Achilles heel. They've been outscored in every single game thus far, except one contest coming out of halftime. And you know what that one time where they scored the most goals in the third quarter was? Their only victory of the season. So that kind of just goes to show you how they come out of half. And it's a tough pill to swallow. They'll continue to build, hopefully, some momentum. But what are your thoughts on this Rochester team and a Warriors team that was able to bounce back to get at least one victory on the weekend?
Yeah, I got to go back to kind of my discussion with Adam Levy last week. We kind of talked about how they're not really getting consistent goaltender play. This time it was Hartley in net. He gave up 11 goals. He had 47 saves, so he actually did decent in this one. But they have guys that are kind of doing a lot of the work. Sean Evans had 6 points in this one. Holden Catoni had 8 points. So those are the two heavy lifters. But other than that, they're really not getting much production from really anybody else, and I think that's what's really hurting them in this one. They just they need one or two more go-to guys, and again, like you mentioned, Mitch Jones just on a tear, 9 points in this one. I mean, he's got to be right now the unanimous MVP. If he keeps it up going, he's going to be the MVP for sure. Still again, like plenty of season left. I don't want to crown him too early, but. There's nothing that I haven't seen from this guy that makes me believe that he doesn't deserve the MVP. You mentioned not only does he get 9 points in this game, but he wins it with the OT winner, shorthanded. It's, he just does it all for this team. He gets loose balls. He had 6 on the day in this game. I just think he's one of the most complete players in the game right now. And he's, again, I think my MVP. Until someone else, proves otherwise. Some other games from around the league. You mentioned Vancouver got their first win of the week. Buffalo got their only win of the weekend on Friday, 15-8 against Vancouver, off of some big performances from Chris Cloutier. He had 2 goals, 4 assists. Josh Byrne also had 2 goals, 4 assists. Garrett Billings had 1 goal and 5 assists. And then, of course, Dane Smith, 2 goals, 6 assists. So all those guys, had a couple goals, but also really contributed, on the assist side of things. They're really facilitating this offense as well. And again, I think, Buffalo is one of those top teams, despite losing their second game of the weekend. I think they're still in really, really great shape. And then finally, another game from the weekend, New York drops another one. They, again, the same woes kind of came up and crept up on them. They started off kind of competing with this Calgary team, but, a bunch of multi-goal runs by the Roughnecks kind of put this game on ice for them. The Roughnecks get a much-needed win to get to 3-4, and they defeat the New York Riptide 13-9. So that's your NLL recaps. Really looking forward to these upcoming games. We'll discuss those a little bit later. But with that, let's take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll go into our fantasy lacrosse pick'em. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Stitcher Premium. You can use Stitcher Premium to listen to shows ad-free such as Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, My Favorite Murder, Wolverine the Lost Trail, or our favorite, The Fantasy Footballers. For only $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year, you get access to Stitcher Originals, bonus episodes, and comedy albums. Better yet, if you go over to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code LACROSSE today, you can get 1 month free. So head on over to Stitcher, sign up, and get your free trial today. All right, so welcome back. Now let's dive into our NLL Fantasy Lacrosse Pick'em. We skipped our fantasy discussion last week because Adam was sick, so we're happy to bring it back this week. It just wouldn't have been the same without you, Adam. I know how it just wouldn't have been the same without you, Adam. So I just didn't feel comfortable doing it. Now I'm glad to bring it back. So let's talk about these top fantasy performers from this week. Some of our biggest point getters from the weekend were north of the border. In cage, Eric Penny had the best points week for goalies despite letting the most goals in. In Game 1, Penny stood on his head making 58 saves and having one caused turnover for 11.75 points. Then in the forward slot, Penny's teammate Mitch Jones continued his fantasy dominance, recording a total of 7 goals, 8 assists, 18 loose balls for 9 and 10.5 points on the weekend. So if you started him in either game, or both, which you could have, you're obviously very, very happy with that. Dan Dawson also showed out for Toronto with a 3 and 4 night for 8.25 points in the Rock's Week 11 victory. And then at defensive in transition, Zach Currier had another solid performance. He had 5.5 points in the Calgary's game. Again, I think he averages probably between 4.5 and 6.5 points every week. Zach Currier is always good for at least 1 or 2 assists, a few cost turnovers, and a bunch of loose balls. So, again, he's a guy that I would continue to start him whenever I could. But those are your top performers from this week. Now, Adam, let's make our Epic Lacrosse Fantasy Locks. Who do you think is going to have a big performance this week?
Yeah, I think Ben Mcintosh, coming off a solid week this past weekend for Saskatchewan. I think he's going to have another big week if he wants to hand Halifax their second loss on the season. Ben just got drafted by the new Waterdogs squad. I think he's going to ride that high with the Waterdogs and have another big week for Saskatchewan, and I go Ben Mcintosh.
All right, my Epic Lacrosse Fantasy Lock is going to be Shane Jackson because he's guaranteed at least 3 fantasy points since he does score 3 goals every single game. He's had a hat trick in every single Georgia Swarm game, so I think he'll get it again this weekend and, maybe add a few assists there and a couple loose balls and for a big fantasy lacrosse week for Shane Jackson. So that's my Epic Lacrosse Fantasy Lock.
Lock it down.
So those are our Epic Lacrosse Fantasy Locks for this week. Let us know your lock by tweeting us your pick using the hashtag Epic Lacrosse Fantasy Lock. And make sure, to sign up for Fantasy Lacrosse and give yourself a chance to win an Epic Lacrosse head. All right, now let's make our game picks, Adam. I went 4-1 on the week. You went 4-1 on the week also. We only had 2 games that we differed on. So that ended up being the difference maker in this one. So I am now 30-15 overall. You are 25-20 overall. You're still 5 games back, but you have a chance to make up some ground here. So let's dive into our game picks. The first of Week 12 we have is the Saskatchewan Rush taking on the Thunderbirds in Halifax for the Military Appreciation Game. Adam, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I teased it a little when it came to my fantasy pick. I think Ben Mcintosh is going to have a big day, and I think the Rush are going to hand the Thunderbirds their second loss on the season.
All right, yeah, and I'm going to go Halifax because I think they're still a solid team. I think even in their loss against Toronto, they still showed that they were the same Halifax team we've seen all year. They had a late surge in the fourth quarter and almost came back against that Rock squad. So I think they're going to give the Rush a really good game, and I think that home field advantage is going to come into play a little bit, and I think they get their 7th victory of the season. The next game of the weekend is our game of the week, and that is the Vancouver Warriors traveling to Toronto to take on the Rock. Adam, who do you like in this one?
I know it may be surprising based off of what happened last weekend, but I'm going to take Vancouver in this one. I do think they played well in Game 2 of the weekend. I think Mitch Jones and Eric Penny are going to have another big weekend, and I'm going to take the Warriors because I think they're going to get the upset, but I also need to catch up with you in a couple games.
All right, well, I'm taking the Rock. I think they're going to continue this 2-game win streak and get their 3rd straight win. I think it's going to be a good game, though. I think the Warriors, we really just haven't been consistent this year. They've been really up and down. It's kind of hard to tell what game you're getting from them. The Rock, however, they're on a hot streak right now. I think Rob Hellier and Dan Dawson are really going to come up big and continue that win streak for the Toronto faithful. And then the next game of the weekend, we have the New York Riptide traveling to Georgia to take on the Swarm. Who do you like in this East matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to have to take Georgia in this one. Even though they've underperformed to this point of the season in comparison to how most expected, I think they're too much for this Riptide squad to take, especially with the Riptide traveling to Georgia. I take Swarm.
All right, I'm taking the Swarm as well. I really think Shane Jackson, like I mentioned before, is going to have another big day. It's hard to bet against him. He's Mr. Consistent. And unfortunately, I think the Riptide are kind of in that position like Rochester are, and just, not enough time to make up ground. Kind of reeling right now, so I'm taking Swarm as well. And then the next game of the weekend, we have the Wings traveling to Buffalo, take on the Bandits. Adam, who do you like in this one?
This is probably the game of the weekend for me, just based off of how both of these teams are playing. I think this is going to be a tough one. It's always tough to go into Bandit Land and come out with a victory, but I'm expecting the Wings to do so. I think Matt Rambo is going to have a big day in Bandit Land and get the Wings their 6th victory on the season.
All right, I like that bold pick. I'm going to go Bandits, though. I think Dane Smith is getting this squad to play at a high level right now. Despite their loss to the Rock, they still put up a great performance and kind of just ran out of steam late in that 4th quarter. But I think they're going to be the better team against this Wings team. That is dangerous, so you can't take them lightly, but I think this North Division is proving to be the best in the MLL. And I think the Bandits hand the Wings a loss in Bandit Land. And then our final game of Saturday is the San Diego Seals taking on the Colorado Mammoth in a crucial Western matchup, a rematch from a few weeks ago from that Las Vegas game, this time in Colorado. Adam, who do you like in this one?
I know this is a tough one. This is a battle, so crazy enough for last place in that Western Division. I don't foresee the Colorado offense playing as poorly as it did this past weekend. I expect, as always, for D. Ward to have a big game. So those two things combined equal a victory for Colorado for me this weekend.
All right, I'm going Seals. I think people are finding the Seals are getting hot right at the right time. They got Casey Jackson back. They got Austin Stotts back. Brody Merrill's still playing at a high level. They have Damoud in cage, who's playing really well in place of Sigliano, who's on IR. So I'm going to take Seals to get another victory against the Mammoth in this one. And then the final game of the weekend is on Sunday, a rematch from earlier this season. The former Wings squad, which is now the Black Wolves, host the new Wings squad. Adam, who do you like in this one?
Just with how competitive these games have been thus far, and this rivalry has grown since the Wings came back last season, I'm taking Wings in this one just for the sole fact that they play one more time. I think that game in a couple weeks will have big playoff implications, so I want it to be an exciting game later on in the season, so I take Wings to even the matchup 1-1 on the season.
All right, I'm going to take the Black Wolves because the Wings have a brutal back-to-back schedule, playing 7 p.m. in Buffalo, then having to travel to Connecticut to play the Black Wolves at 5 p.m. on Sunday. The schedulers did not do them any favors, and the Black Wolves did win in tic-tac-toe this week against the Wings on social media, although I think the Wings might have won the whole argument because after taking their L in tic-tac-toe, they said you have the overhead view, which I was dying at. So hopefully it doesn't come down to some overhead camera angles in this one. Hopefully whatever team wins comes out fair and square, but I am going with Callum Crawford and the Black Wolves in this final game of Week 12. So those are our game picks for this weekend. We'll see if Adam can make up some ground.
I either have definitely made up ground or I am way in the hole.
Yeah, we definitely, did not agree on a lot of these picks, so it should be an interesting week. But with that, let's tease some things that we have out right now. On our website, we have our interview with Kylie Miller. Our 5 and 5 is now in article format. We're going to be doing that with a lot of our past episodes. So feel free to check out that article if you hadn't listened to our podcast with her. And then we also have an upcoming episode with Andy Copeland where he's going to actually break down this Waterdogs squad. That will be coming out on Monday. So definitely make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. He's going to go into everything that went into him choosing this Waterdogs roster, as well as talking about his career, starting out with Maryland as an assistant and then going to Fairfield as head coach for over 10 years. And now, he's with the Waterdogs. So we're really looking forward to talking with him. And again, make sure you subscribe to our podcast and newsletter on our website so you never miss an article or an episode. With that brings us to overtime. Adam, what are you looking forward to most this coming week?
It has to be a potential Philly Barrage announcement, baby. I think this is something that's been a long time coming. Whether you're a fan of that PLL, whether you're a fan of the MLL, middle school Adam is very, very excited to see that trademark announcement. Can't wait to see how they revamp the logo. Hopefully that'll be announced this weekend or week. I'm just really excited to bring some of my old swag out and bring that inner fan back out with the Barrage.
All right, Adam, just make sure it fits. You know, you were in middle school when they last played, so a hat would work. I don't know about a shirt or a little hoodie. I don't know if you're going to fit into that anymore. So, but yes, we are excited. Hashtag bring back the Barrage. It looks like the Barrage are being brought back. Very exciting. But for me, I'm also interested in something MLL. I'm interested to see what they're doing with these rosters in terms of, you know, are the Rattlers roster becoming the Hammerheads? It seems like that might be the case, but it'd be odd for them to not say that outright if the Rattlers weren't moving to Connecticut. You know, it was the Rattlers are ceasing operations, and now the Hammerheads are a team. So we don't know if that's the case. So I'm interested to kind of just see where all those players are going to end up. You know, you got a Bryce Wasserman and a Bradley Voigt. You have two guys that, you know, really came on the scene both this year and previous years in the MLL and kind of made a name for themselves on this Rattlers team. So I'm looking forward to see where they end up. Sean Scanoni is another one, you know, who played really well in cage for the Rattlers. Will he be going to Connecticut? You know, who knows? He's a Long Island guy. So we'll see. But overall, I'm really excited, you know, again, just on what the state of pro lacrosse is right now. You know, there's been a lot of stuff with both the PLL. You know, they announced that they're going to have 20 slots as opposed to 18 TV slots this summer. So that's great on them. They're getting more exposure to the game. Again, the NLL is pushing the boundaries with what they're delivering to fans. They've had a lot of cool content with their players come out. I think Devin Caney's doing a really great job, you know, with these interviews with a lot of these players. So overall, I think pro lacrosse is in a really good spot, and we're enjoying watching all these leagues grow and develop. So that wraps up episode 63. Thank you guys all for listening. Again, please subscribe. Consider leaving us a review if you really enjoyed this episode, and we hope you tune in next time to Pro Lacrosse Talk.